Rose Conley is also a parent. This lady. Yeah, we all know. You know, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I knew that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know her.
Because I don't know. I just do. Because she checks, she, checks on my friend. She's a wonderful.
I know.
I'm in touch with her. Yeah.
I have to talk to her for a long time.
Got it.
All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Brooke. I'm one of our program coordinators over here, and welcome to our first Making Sense of Sense of the year. We do 2 series of these a year, 3 in May and 3 in November. And whenever you complete all 3 of these series in May, you get a free consultation with an elder law attorney and a really cool workbook about finances. So we encourage you to attend the next 2 weeks as well. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. We have a lot of people joining us through Zoom as well. So you'll see Rose up here kind of looking at the camera too. So we have a bunch of people through Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today, Ms. Rose Colley. She has been a volunteer of ours for a very long time. I feel like she's part of the fold over here. She's on our education committee, and we rely a lot on her expertise. She has a master's degree in social work from LSU and is a certified, has a certificate of specialization in gerontology. She has over 45 years of experience as a social worker and 30 of those years exclusively working with the elderly. We refer to her a lot for caregivers who want some one-on-one attention of just getting your ducks in a row and kind of going through the challenge of the dementia journey. We rely a lot on Rose for that. She meets with many families regarding caregiver stress, and she's going to dive into some of those topics today about finances specifically. We are recording today's presentation, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you wanted to reference this presentation or send it to somebody later, that's where we can find that. And if you have any questions during the presentation for the folks on Zoom, you will be muted throughout the whole call. So just type your questions into the chat and we will read those out at the very end. And then those in person, if y'all want to just save y'all's questions until the end, we'll have kind of a question and answer space afterwards. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Rose. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you, Brooke. I started out when I came in today telling Brooke, I'm not sure how I got into this. This is not my specialty. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm talking about finance. But I'm just a social worker, you know. So I'm going to give it my best shot. We'll see what happens. I'm going to start off by talking about caregiver stress, and I'm sure this is nothing new, but I'm just gonna touch on it briefly. And I'm gonna start by asking, how do you know if you have caregiver stress or not, you know? And so I'm gonna ask, what are your symptoms? Or let me ask this first. How many of you here feel like you have caregiver stress? By hand check.
Hey, Rose, might need to move a little bit closer to the TV and maybe project a little bit more towards the TV and up.
Okay, thank you. So we have a few who are experiencing caregiver stress. What are some of the symptoms of caregiver stress, if you don't mind sharing? Exhaustion. Ooh, boy, hit right to the core. Okay, anything else come to mind?
Pain in my chest.
Anxiety probably. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. What next? Yeah. A lot of things. Okay. In my practice, I have a private practice, and in my practice, a lot of times it's a matter of somebody coming to me saying they're overwhelmed. There's so much on their plate, you know, and so they want to push stuff off the plate. And so that's what we work on. We work on what's on the plate, what's making you feel overwhelmed. Another symptom is not only the anxiety you mentioned, but what about depression as a caregiver? You know, yeah, big time depression. How about too much or maybe too little sleep? Anybody experience that? You know?
Not enough.
Not enough, sure. What about poor eating habits? Too much or too little? Okay, just keep your hand up. Yeah, too much or too little. You're eating on the run, you're eating when you get a chance. From one
I'm in the middle of the night.
yeah, whenever you get the opportunity or whenever you're anxious, you know, you're eating, yeah. What about lack of motivation or maybe even immobilization? Just feeling like there's so much you need to do and you just can't make yourself get moving. You can't get
I need to leave my hands.
yeah, just yeah.
Glory, hallelujah. I need
To
to.
a permanent, okay?
Yeah.
What about isolation? Just feeling like you're all alone, like the rest of the world has moved on without you, and here you are, just being by yourself. What about lack of concentration? You know, not being able to focus. It's like, again, you go to that full plate and it's like, where do I start? Where do I look at first? You know, so being able to focus on any one thing might be an issue. And then I know we could go on, there's probably a lot more, but what about maybe anger or resentment towards that person who has that diagnosis of dementia? You know, they don't want to have it any more than you want to see them with it, but darn it, it changes everything about your life. You know, so many people say, oh, we thought we were going to retire and, you know, have our golden years. I had a client many years ago who her phrase, she actually had dementia, and her phrase was, those golden years have turned to brass. And I think about it often, you know, we're not promised a rose garden. We never know what's going to happen as we move forward. So nobody wants it. You don't want it for them, but they don't want it either. So this is what we're dealing with. So these are some of the symptoms that I see a lot in the caregivers who come to me. So now I'm going to ask, do you know of any caregivers who claim not to have caregiver stress? I know I don't. Nearly everybody comes to me for that reason. So it is a big issue. It is there. Okay, so why do we need to be concerned for caregiver stress? You know, as a caregiver, how does it impact us in that caregiver role? One, it's hard to be your best when you're suffering with all of these symptoms. So you're not going to be your best. You may not take good care of yourself. How many doctor appointments do you cancel at the last minute? How many trips with your friends do you turn down? So forth, we could go on and on. And maybe if you're not taking care of yourself, maybe the care that you give your patient is less than optimal as well. You know, is it the best care that you can give? Yes, it probably is under the circumstances, but is it ideal? Most caregivers say, I wish I could do a little bit more. I wish I could also do this and add that. So sometimes we find that things are falling through the cracks. You know, we intend to do something about it, but it just never happens. So maybe you pick up the mail and you throw it in a basket and you don't go through it for a few days, and then whoops, you missed something that was important. So what about overlooking bills, maybe getting past due bills sometimes? What about failing to return important phone calls, or even just phone calls from friends that leave a message? Hi, I want to check on you. And you let it go to voicemail thinking, oh, I'll call them later. And that doesn't happen either. So these are all things that impact. How about maybe letting some of the housekeeping go? You know, maybe you were immaculate and cleaned the baseboards and the wood trim and the windowsill. I'm sorry, I do that maybe once a year, but you know, I know people that's a regular, you know, so maybe you have to let some of that go. Or maybe the yard doesn't get mowed every week, or it doesn't get trimmed as often, you know. Maybe there's less grocery shopping or shopping at all, and you're saying, I'm wearing the same clothes I wore 5 years ago and they don't fit anymore. You know, I've lost weight, I've gained weight, whatever, but I don't feel like shopping, you know, so that doesn't happen. And because you're not going to the grocery store, maybe the meals you're preparing are not balanced. It's like, well, let me see what's in the cabinet. Okay, this is what we're gonna do, or this is what's in the fridge or the freezer. And it's just thrown together and it's not your best effort at a balanced meal. So then maybe you have an issue of malnutrition for yourself as a caregiver or for the patient. So that might result in weight gain or weight loss. It might impact some medical conditions like blood pressure or diabetes, etc. What about attention to personal hygiene? Okay, just taking care of yourself. I will admit, I am guilty that on a day that I'm not working, I might be in my pajamas till 10 o'clock, you know, and then finally I'll go get dressed. But I'm not putting makeup on if I don't have to go anywhere. And then maybe 5 o'clock in the evening, my husband will say, let's go out to eat. Nah, I don't want to put makeup on this late in the day, you know. So the less we do to prepare ourselves early in the day, the less we're going to do as the day goes on. So if those friends make those phone calls, let's go do such and such, you're more likely to say, maybe not, you know. And if you're paying less attention to personal hygiene, how are you doing with your patient? What is their hygiene like? How are you taking care of them? And then the last one I have is the haphazard medication administration. Well, yeah, I missed that 8 o'clock med. It's okay if it's late, but it's now almost time for the next dose. So do you skip that dose? Do you double up? What are you doing? So the medication administration can be haphazard. So you want to be cautious about that. The next one, these are some of the things that people bring to me in my practice. They see me when they're first hit with this diagnosis. How do I deal with this? They're in the first stage of grief over this, which is denial. You know, the first thing we do when we get bad news, whether it's a phone call saying someone we know passed away, someone's really sick, someone had an accident, the first words out of our mouths are what? Oh no, you know, this is the denial part. I don't want to hear this. This could not have happened. So we go through that with dealing with that first initial diagnosis. So a lot of times that's what people bring to me. And then the eventual progression of the disease as it goes along, they come back and say, okay, now I'm dealing with this. There's the adapting to life changes that are brought on by this progressive decline. Things are not like you thought they were going to be. You have to make changes, do things differently. They bring in the legal issues, power of attorney, living will, general will. I'm not an attorney. I refer out for those things, but we talk about them and the need for them. Blended issues come up, and these are often money related. When I have a blended family, that one of the trends that I'm seeing is that if this marriage occurred after children brought from, I'm going to say a woman marries a man who had children before, okay? And those children are brought into this blended family, but they're grown, and they're living outside of the house. So there's never really a bond, a mother-child bond that forms with these adult children. And in the beginning, it might not be so much of an issue, but when that dad comes down with a diagnosis of dementia, then those children are struggling like, okay, well, we'll help with him, but we're not helping you, we're going to split up how we do this, or I'm not able to go here. I can't do that. You don't have the cohesion that you have, I think, in a family where the children grow up with the mom and the dad in the same family. The more you blend, the more complicated it gets. Age differences. I've had several of these situations lately where there might be a 15 or 20-year difference in the age, and usually this is a second marriage. And when they married, maybe one was in the 30s and the other was maybe 45, 50-ish, and it was like, no big deal. But when you get older and the older person is diagnosed with a dementia and the younger person is still saying, I want to travel, I want to do things with my friends, and my patient can't. So I'm seeing some of that now that I've not seen before then. Okay, another issue is making decisions about living arrangements, and this is really difficult. We spend a lot of time on this. I do a lot of work in this area. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then managing the finances, which again, I'm limited. I can barely balance my checkbook, but we work on the finances, and there are a couple of things that I want to express about that. Okay. So you're faced with continuing what's been done in the past. You've been doing it this way before, so you're going to continue doing it this way. You just kind of hold on. And I even suggest, as long as you can, to keep things the same, because the person who has the dementia will relate more to what's familiar than what's new. So you kind of don't want to change things until you really have to, in most cases, if that's at all possible. This phrase, as long as possible, has everybody used that or heard it, or, just on a personal level, I'll say my mom passed away about 4 years ago, and she was 1 month shy of being 102 years old. And my sisters and I took care of her for like the last 2 years. Up until then, she was on her own. And I said, Mom, what do you want us to do if you can't stay in your house by yourself? And she said, well, if I have to go somewhere, that's okay. And I said, well, okay. When would we want to do that? She said, well, I want to stay in my house as long as possible. I said, okay. So tell me, when will I know that time? When will I know, okay, we've hit that the clock on the wall says as long as possible. So what do we do? She said, well, when I don't know, y'all, meaning my sisters and I, or when I'm not sure about what's going on or recognize things anymore. So she gave me her permission. She said, if y'all need to do that, that's okay. But define as long as possible. And is it the same for everyone? No way. It's different for everyone because there are different factors that make that as long as possible a definite time. Okay, so you want to hang on to things that are familiar, but you also need to make changes and adapt to the changes in the situation. So what was working before, like perhaps you divvied up the errands and the other person can't drive anymore, so you're going to have to change that. Maybe you divided up household chores and, so now you need to change that. What about paying bills? Who did that? Maybe that has changed. So you're going to hang on to the things you can because it's better for the person diagnosed, but then you also need to make changes as needed. And again, those are an individual basis. All right, so let's talk about role reversal. And I realized I put on here taking over business affairs because that's one of the biggest things. And I'm going to say, has anybody in here worked for Exxon or one of the big plants or staff? I ran into, I'm not getting it so much now, but maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, I ran into a group of women who came in at different times for help. And they said, Rose, I've never written a check. And I'm like, what? And they were married to men who were supervisors or in administrative roles in the plant. And so those men were managing the household business affairs. So I hit a patch of women who didn't even know how to write a check, much less pay the bills. I'm not finding as much of it now, but for a while there, that was kind of a common thing that I ran into. So we see the role reversal in who takes care of the business affairs, but what about some of the other things? What about the management of the household? Who's going to mow the lawn or see to it that it gets done? Who's going to clean the house or see to it that gets done? Who's going to take care of the cooking? I had this one time in Port Allen. This was probably 25, 30 years ago. And and so I lost my train of thought. Okay. His wife was diagnosed. And what he did was, in the earliest stages, she was still able to cook with his help. So he wrote down her recipes. They would cook together and he wrote down the recipes. And so he continued to cook when she couldn't do it anymore. I thought that was pretty remarkable. I've never run across anybody that's done that since. But I just thought that was a really neat thing to do. If you have the foresight, like, oh, I'm going to need to cook. Let me go ahead and learn how to do it now. So while I've written here business affairs, really that role reversal occurs in a lot of different ways. And it might be and probably will be very difficult for the person that wasn't involved. Like I said, the one who didn't write the checks, and again, personally, my husband handles our bill paying and so forth. And a lot of it is on computer, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute and the problems that poses. Well, okay. So we need to figure out what needs to be done and where do we start, okay? It's not easy to just step into that role and all of a sudden you're in the magic spot. So do you pay bills by mail or do you pay online or is it both? And if so, being online does mean you need those passwords and you need the sites to go to. Do you pay monthly quarterly? Is it one-time payment? You know, all of this, where do you find that information? Writing checks and balancing a checkbook. Does anybody still balance a checkbook? Okay, all right, good. I have so many people lately that say, oh, I don't worry about it. You know, it's like, when I get the statement, I look at it, and it's close, it's like, okay. I'm not, have to balance. And if I'm off a little bit, I'm okay. It doesn't have to be to the penny, but to just let it ride, I'm not sure about doing that. What about electronic transfers? I am not computer literate. That's another thing I'm not. But I have learned about setting up bills so that they pay automatically, and that's a big help. So that's something else that you might need to learn about to make it more efficient. Okay, so what's pending when you step in? What bills are there to pay? And again, you go back to the frequency. How often are they paid? What about one-time payments? When is your house insurance due? When are the taxes due? What about pest control? When does that happen? What about air conditioning? You know, when they come in and do the assessments and the changes, the seasons and so forth. There's so much to learn and pick up on. And then what obligations need to be fulfilled? Do you have a pledge to your church or to some organization or some other obligation that's pending? Okay, so where do we go to find what's needed? Obviously, the paper files, you know, and they might be stacked in somewhere instead of, my guess is they're not nice and neat in files. Although I do compliment my husband on that. He does have everything filed. Now, whether I can follow his system or not, that'll be another question. But, so we have the paper files. Then we have computer files. Do you realize that on your computer you have files that you can look into? But guess what? Most of them, you need a password to get into it. So where are the passwords? You need to start making lists of those passwords or find out how to change passwords so that you can use them. Do you need professional assistance? Do you need the help of maybe a CPA to guide you in payment and setting up things and so forth for you to follow? What about a banker? Can your banker help you with maybe a pending loan or the need for a loan or setting up things at the bank, trusts and so forth? What about a financial advisor? What about somebody to guide you if you're making investments? These are all folks that, like I said when I started, I'm not a financial wizard. That's not what I do, but these people are. And any of them can probably be of great help to you. What about IT assistance? Do you have somebody that you can go to when you have a computer problem? You know, I have somebody, I have 7 of them. They're called grandkids. And I tell them, I just got this new app and I don't know how to do this. Well, Nana, all you have to do is press that. It's like, oh, okay, that easy, huh? Let me do it for you. I said, no. Show me how. Don't do it for me because next time I'll be calling you back again to say, okay, I need you to come do it. So IT assistant. We also belong to, I think it's called Cajun Clickers, which is a program where minimal amount of money, you can actually even bring your computer in and they'll help you do things on your computer. I think Office Depot has a service where they will help with computers. So there are a lot of services. We found probably a couple of months ago, it's like gold. We have a provider, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but anyway, we have everything bundled, you know, TV, phone, internet. And we found out that for a minimal fee, I think it was like maybe $25 a year, they give 24/7 computer support. And lo and behold, our household computer, my husband thought had crashed. And so he called this number and said, okay, y'all said you would help. And they walked him through and he got it up and running and it was just fine. And they will even come to your home and help you with technical issues. So this is good. It's good to know. Also family support. And I've already mentioned who's the best person in the family to ask about those computers. The grandkids. They're up to date. They're not afraid of dealing with them. I'm always like, what if I raise it? What if I break it? What if I, they're not afraid of it. They go and press the keys and lo and behold, it works just fine. So, okay, let's move on from there. Okay, now we get more to the actual financial part. What are the types of income? And sometimes we only think of income as our earnings, okay? But there's more than the earnings. And I do, some caregivers tell me, I have to work. That's the only way I'm making ends meet. So even though they're caring for someone who has dementia, they're still trying to work at least maybe part-time. Then we have benefits, Social Security, which is so easy. You can do it online now. You do it several months before you're eligible, and it pretty much goes through easily. VA is a whole another story from what I understand. I have people anybody here have dealt with VA and know that? Okay. I've had a number of folks that say they walk away from it because it's so difficult. But VA supposedly helps. We have some elder law attorneys who are known for being able to help with VA benefits. And from what I understand, they're worth pursuing, so we want to take care of that. Okay, then what about retirement income? Do you have income from the previous job, yours or the person diagnosed? I don't think we have this as much as we once did. I think now it's more your choice if you enroll in like IRAs, 401ks, all that kind of stuff. It's an investment on your part. But years ago, I think most of the plants did like annuities and that was part of retirement and so forth. So there can be still retirement income, but I think there's less than now. And then what about investments? Do you have investments? How are they set up? Like, do you draw money out of that investment every month? And do you consider that part of your income? Okay, and there may be other things that I'm overlooking. Does anybody else have any other type of income that you're dealing with? Oh, what about rental properties? Maybe you have houses or properties that you're leasing, and so you get monthly money from them. So I guess that would be another possibility. Okay, so now we have the income, we have that cost. So now that's the incoming. Let's look at the outgoing, okay? Can you identify all of your expenses? Maybe you have a house that's paid for, or maybe you still have a mortgage, so that's a monthly payment, or maybe you're renting, so you have that monthly. But what about utilities? What about insurance? What about property taxes? What about maintenance? That's the pest control, the air conditioner people, the people that regularly come in and check something out for you. So identify all of those expenses and then decide, do you need to make cutbacks? And if so, where can you cut back? Where are you comfortable cutting back? And where do you say, I need to cut this, but I really don't want to, and then you come to grips, is it possible to keep this going and cut here? What can be downside? Can you move from a bigger place to a smaller place and save money? Or will you move from a bigger place to a smaller place and it'll cost you more money? That's a possibility. So you want to be really careful in making those decisions. Okay, this is an exercise that I've done for years when people come to me and they use the phrase, Rose, I'm afraid I'm going to outlive my money. Anybody in here have that concern? Yeah. I think that's a reality, unless you have a lot more money than I have, it's a real concern. So I thought, I once had a couple living in assisted living. He was, I believe, 92. This was like 25 years ago, I guess. So my facts might be a little fuzzy, but it'll be close. He was about 92. His wife was like 91. And he said, Rose, I'm afraid every day they're going to kick us out of assisted living because we can't pay for it. And I said, but your bills are being paid. Are you behind? No. And he had 2 children, both lived out of state, and they helped as much as they could, but they weren't keeping him in the loop of how they were taking care of things and how he was doing. So I came up with this idea, and I asked him, I said, do you trust me enough to tell me more about your finances? He said, yeah. So I said, okay, let's figure out how much money do you think you have in your checking, your savings, in your investments? What are you worth, basically? Okay. And I was pretty well astounded by what he told me. Okay. Then we added up, because he was in assisted living, he didn't have to worry about a monthly utility bill, about property taxes, about groceries. Everything was combined into that one monthly bill for assisted living. So I said, okay, let's take that amount. And then what else do you pay for? And he said, well, we use a driver a couple of times a week. We both go, I go to the barber shop, she goes to the beauty shop. We do this. So we tried to come up with all their extra expenses and we added it up. So I came up with a figure of what his value was, what his monthly expenses were, divided monthly expenses into what he said his worth was. And lo and behold, we came up with the fact that he could live another 22 years on the amount of money that he had. And so I said, well, Mr. So-and-so, you got 22 years ahead of him. Remember, he was 22, And I said, do you think you're going to outlive it now? He said, well, I might. I said, and if you do, we'll figure it out. So it's just a ballpark way to kind of figure. If you're wondering, mom has X amount of money invested, and we're drawing out X amount a month to either pay for caregivers at home or to pay for assisted living or nursing home. How long can we do it on the money she has? Easy exercise. Divide expenses into her work, and it will give you a ballpark figure of how many years. Now, keep in mind, too, that hopefully the economy will improve and the investments and the monies they have will increase while you're taking away from it. So you're going to have some balance in there as well. But it kind of helps, I think, to have a ballpark idea. Okay, so now we've looked at some of the finances. So now I want to talk about, should I skip ahead? No. How are we going to meet needs and incorporate some of the financial stuff in there? Sometimes you have to make a decision like, I can't, so-and-so's, the person I'm caring for is bedbound, or they need to be bathed, or I can't do all of this. I don't want to do all of this, but you don't have the money to pay to have it done. So maybe you have to do it yourself. So you meet options of providing hands-on care as the primary caregiver. You're doing everything that that person needs. Or maybe incorporating some family assistance. And the way I do this is I say, okay, who in your family can you count on for help? Well, I have a granddaughter that lives down the block from me, and she's always saying, let me know if you need. Okay, so what can she do? Maybe she can run errands for you. Maybe she can come sit with your patient while you run errands or do whatever you need to do. So that's a granddaughter. What about sons and daughters? How available are they? Maybe you're still working, but lo and behold, on the weekend, they can give you a Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon. What can they do? Do they have financial strength that they say, look, I'll take over paying your bills for you. If that takes some stress off, I'll do that for you. What are their strengths? What can they do? Does somebody like to cook? Let them cook a meal or two for you a week. Hey, I love that. That'd be fine with me. So what can they do and who can do that for you? Then let's look at some of the community resources. I put sitters here. Nowadays, we call them more caregivers than we do sitters. But these are services that are provided mostly by non-medical caregiver providers. I have had people who approached me and said, I sit for a living. Can you give my name to people to hire me? I don't do it because I feel liable. If that person doesn't work out, I feel like it comes back to me. I've made a bad reference, so I make it a habit. I don't. Even though somebody tells me, oh, but this person is wonderful. I just, if you want to pass it along to somebody else, that's fine, but I don't. Through these sitter services, they provide people who are licensed, bonded, and trained. And so you pay a little bit more for them, yes, but you have somebody who oversees what they are doing. I have had folks who have hired people. I'm thinking of somebody that I worked with a few years ago who had hired a sitter that somebody referred. The daughter lived somewhere up north. I'm going to say like maybe Illinois, I'm going to say in the middle states, I guess. And so she was managing care from a distance. And she got more involved as her mother was less able to manage finances. She found out the sitter had stiffed her mom for $135,000 over a couple of years. That's my reason for not referring individuals. If something happens when you go through an agency, if they break something, if something is missing, you have the agency behind them. That's why they're licensed and bonded, and they're trained to provide the services. People can tell you, that they know how to take care of somebody who has dementia, but do they really? What training did they have? It's really difficult to be able to assess that. Whenever the agencies are doing the training, I feel better about that. Okay. Drivers, these same agencies can provide drivers. And this is one of the difficult things to do, is to stop someone from driving. You tell me you just went through that. We start driving when we're 14, 15 years old. And so it's like, it's my car, I paid for it, these are my keys, I can drive it. But when you get down to where do you need to go, is it more important that you go or more important that you drive? You're trying to get them to communicate that it's more important that they go to meet the friend for the coffee, or that they go out to eat, or that they go to the grocery store themselves. it's more important to have somebody to drive them there safely. So these same agencies can provide people who are drivers. Excuse me. What about housekeepers? Can a housekeeper help? Whether it's on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, once a month, maybe, a couple of times a year to come in and thoroughly clean. What's helpful and what do you do? Home health. Okay. Home health, sometimes people think, oh yeah, we'll get home health, you can send us a sitter. Okay, that doesn't quite work that way. With home health, a nurse, an aide, physical therapist, speech therapist will come in and provide a particular service, but then they're gone. They might be there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then they're gone. They're not sitters. They're not going to come in and stay with your individual. They come in to provide a service, and then they're gone. Okay, hospice is another step. Hospice steps in, and let me stop for a second. There is something now between home health and hospice, and it's called palliative care. And there are different names for those companies, obviously. But I've had a recent experience where I spoke to somebody about that and said, well, I thought hospice was palliative care, which means instead of trying to make somebody better, we're going to make them comfortable. And sometimes that means more sedation, whatever it takes to make them comfortable, okay, that's hospice. They're doing nothing to make it better, nothing to try to cure the situation anymore, just comfort. Palliative is in between home health, which comes in to provide services, and hospice, which says we're making you comfortable. Palliative says we're going to make you as comfortable as we can while you're still receiving treatment. So somebody who is in receiving, say, chemotherapy can still get palliative care or comfort care with all that entails. Whereas in hospice, you would have to stop chemotherapy to get hospice. It was sort of a new thing to me because I'd always said hospice was palliative, but it's another step that's in there, and I'm seeing companies now that are providing that. Okay, then we have the possibility of wonderful places like Charlie's Place, where your person can go and spend the day, and it gives you a free day to go home and go back to bed and rest because you haven't slept in 3 days, to go out and get a lot of things done, to give your person an opportunity to be with other people that will distract him and entertain him. They do wonderful things here. And I have a couple now that I work with, and the gentleman comes here and he's been out sick and he keeps saying, when can I go back? He doesn't know what to call it, but he knows he's not coming to Charlie's Place, and he's saying, when can I go back? I miss being there, So adult daycare is a wonderful service for both the patient and for the caregiver. I think it fills a huge need. And then we have these social clubs, and these are things like maybe even council on aging. Some of the churches offer groups sometimes, some of the bigger churches, where it's just a place for, if you're over 65 or whatever, you can go and spend the day or part of the day and be doing activities with other people who are older as well, So social clubs. Okay, then we have respite care. Anybody familiar with respite care, and have you used respite care? Okay, respite care is a break in care. So if you come to Charlie's Place, if your individual comes to Charlie's Place, that's respite. You're getting that day. But let's say you have a granddaughter who's graduating and will be a doctor, and you want to make that graduation, but your spouse is not able they can go into an assisted living or nursing home for 2 or 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, whatever period of time you need. And then when you come back from that event, you take them back home with you. So I like the idea of respite care, and most assisted living and nursing home places will provide respite if they have available space. It's kind of like giving a trial run, and they're kind of hoping that this might be a future customer for them. But from your perspective, I think it gives the caregiver a break so that they can do whatever it is that they need to do. But it also gives you a chance to see how your loved one might adjust to being in assisted living or in a nursing home. It gives you a little snapshot of how they might adjust to that environment. So I think respite care is a great alternative, even if it's just temporary. Support groups. Alzheimer's provides so many support groups, different days, different times, different, I'm going to say almost content based on who participates. The thing that a support group offers you is its footsteps. Somebody has already been where you are struggling right now. Somebody's been through something similar and they can offer you support and help. And if you look behind you, there's somebody else coming who's going to be one day where you are. So you can turn around and help them. So this is like it's a cycle. We help each other through support groups. These are, I don't think you can put a value on them. To me, they're extremely important. And accept offers of help for meals and errands and outings. We have so many people who mean well and they say, look, if you need anything, call me. And we say, yeah. And do we call? No, most of the time. So unless they bake a casserole and bring it to the door and say, here, I was baking today, I made this for you. It's like, oh, this is wonderful and you appreciate it. But would you ask them to do it? No, But do we enjoy being able to do it for somebody else? Yes. I've done it. I've cooked things for people who were ill or are struggling, or I've offered to sit or run errands or whatever. And it's very rewarding. I feel like they're doing me a favor. So if you flip that, you're giving somebody else an opportunity to feel good if you accept their offers. I think it works both ways. So, and the thing, and a really important thing about that is if you don't accept those offers, guess what? They move on and they quit off. I am guilty of that. I have a dear friend whose wife passed away about 3 years ago. And I made a point, I would call every week, every couple of weeks, and I would say, can we cook for you? Can we take you out to eat? And at first it was like, no, he just wasn't ready. And then we finally, I don't know, maybe over a year or so, did things together. And then he started again saying, no, I just not. And to be honest, it's been probably 4 months since the last time I talked to him. So I know this, and still I've moved on. So if you don't accept those offers of help, they will move on. Okay, so I think I'm running out of time, but let me hit on these quickly. Assisted living, we have levels of care in assisted living. Actually, it starts with independent living and then assisted living. When you go into assisted living, you get a basic package of room and board. But then if you require assistance, maybe to bathe or to direct you from apartment to dining room or to help with changing and dressing and so forth, they start adding more costs. It's bundles. They'll add more layers to that care. So that basic cost then begins to climb. I think important to say about assisted living is that assisted living is private pay. Some people are under the misconception that Medicare will pay for assisted living. It does not. It's strictly out of pocket unless you have long-term care insurance that might cover it. And one of the problems with long-term care insurance, as I understand it, and again, these policies will vary, but the one that I'm most mindful of is the insurance that pays only for the services. They don't pay for that room and board, that basic package. But then if you start needing help to administer medications or to bathe or dress and so forth, and so maybe you're paying an additional $400 or $500 a month for extra services, that's what long-term, I believe, that's my understanding. Nursing homes, again, Medicaid will pay for a nursing home. People misconstrue that Medicare will pay for a nursing home. It will not, with the exception that if you have been in the hospital for X number of days and you need what's called skilled care, in other words, you still need nursing care, they can transfer you to a nursing home, and Medicare will pay, I think, up to 100 days in a nursing home, and then you're on your own. To qualify for Medicaid, it's a poverty type program, meaning it's based on need. You have to be able to show that you have no money to pay for a nursing home before Medicaid will kick in and pay for it. Now, there is something called spousal impoverishment, which means if one person is staying at home and the spouse is going into the nursing home, the person staying at home is allowed to keep a significant amount of income to pay for their needs at home, and the same with resources. They're allowed to keep resources to meet their needs. I can't quote the amounts on those, but I'm going to say that the income is probably in excess of $2,000 a month now, and the resources I think are maybe around 80,000 or more, but those change, so that's why I'm not certain about those figures. But it's not like you have to give everything up and then you have nothing to live on. So bear that in mind. If you need nursing home care, the staff at the nursing home will help you to apply for Medicaid. There's a different standard for Medicaid if you're living out in the community in your own home, or if you move into a nursing home. There are different limits for eligibility. So if you apply for Medicaid and you live at home, you may not qualify, but if you're going into a nursing home, you may qualify, and the nursing home will help you with that process. Again, long-term care insurance might pay for nursing home, and then obviously private pay. And one last thing, and I will explain them. Somebody in my family passed on this book to me, and it's called Make Your Bed, written by Admiral William McRaven, who I think was a SEAL. And the concept is, in no time at all, your day can go crazy, okay? But if you get up and make your bed, you've accomplished one thing. There is one thing that you actually finished, and it might be the only thing that you complete that day. So make your bed. Okay, and now I'll take questions.
So for anybody that has questions, Rose, if you just want to repeat the question back so that people on the audio can hear, if anybody in person hears, but I'll read you any of the ones that come through the chat.
Okay.
So if anybody that's on Zoom has any questions, y'all can go ahead and enter those into the chat and we'll read those out.
Have any of you experienced any of the things that I've talked about? Have any further questions? Like, assisted living, okay? This is something that people come to me a lot. They're trying to make the decision to do that. And assisted living costs, I'm gonna say maybe 45,000 a month. And if you're using a memory care unit, it can be even more than that, okay? So I have folks that, that's just too much. But when you figure this is your home, this is your food, your utilities, the taxes and the insurance on your home, and if you add all of those expenses up, it balances out more than what you think. So I encourage people. Yes,
What
ma'am.
about the independent living? How does that price out with the assisted living?
Right, independent living, to my knowledge, and again, I can't give you figures, but it's less. Because they're simply giving you an apartment, they're paying or providing meals, they're doing some housekeeping, maybe laundry, they provide some transportation. So you're getting all of those services, but they're not providing you with hands-on help to bathe or dress or administer medications and so forth. So independent living is considerably less. And we do have facilities that go all the way from independent living down to assisted living and down to memory care. And places will tell you sometimes that they can provide care up until the person passes away.
When do you know it's time to go into independent living? We're just now this year starting to have to have yard work done for us. There's some things that are starting to pop up, and from trying to figure everything out.
Yes.
So the expenses of our big home and our big piece of property compared to independent living. And we've got a beautiful home, a beautiful backyard, we love it. And so do you sacrifice? I'm always afraid of not having enough money for me when I get older.
Right.
So I want to balance, staying at home as long as we can compared to independent living, which he might be ready, and he don't want to. I know that. I don't want to really either, but
you may need to.
For my stress level of trying to get all of this pulled together,
Right.
has caused me some problems. And I don't know when that time is for independent. If we wait too long, I want to transition, better from our home to independent, to assisted living, and to make it easier on both of us. But to be aware of financial stuff too. So when everything's paid for, as we have, I'm battling this right now.
Okay, so the question is, how do you know when to make a move from your home into independent living? This differs for everybody because it depends on how much help you have at home. Can you afford to have somebody to come in and do maintenance and housekeeping and whatever else you need, okay? But the flip side of that too is, what's gonna happen to your house when you move out of it? Are you gonna sell it? And if so, she's saying she's concerned, for her income meeting her needs until she passes away. When you sell your home, you're not going to turn around and pay all of that into assisted living. So you invest that money and draw from it for assisted living, which some people don't realize that. They think, oh, I never thought about that, So yeah, when you take the money that your home is valued at and invest that and get some financial advice as to how to go about doing that.
And the content,
Yes.
60 years of content.
Yes, that's the problem. When we say we don't want to move, it's all the
All our stuff.
What are you gonna do with this stuff? Yeah, yeah, it's difficult. But my pat phrase, when people say, how do you know when to move? When to do something different? When what you're doing right now is no longer working, then it's time to do something different. You know, if it's causing you stress to manage all of this stuff, it's like, I have a visual of, the circus performers that twirl a plate on a stick. It's like you only have so many hands to twirl so many of those plates. When the plates start falling, you're not managing anymore. So it's an individual assessment of, have you reached your limit?
That helps.
And I believe in writing things down. I believe in a pro and con, reasons to stay at home, reasons to move. And see how the list comes out. Be honest, list everything and see. Usually one list is much longer than the other. Anything else?
Nobody in the chat so far. Just after 1 o'clock, so I mean, we're welcome to stay in here as long as possible, as long as Ms. Rose has available. But if anybody has any questions in the chat, you can put those in there now. But so far, nothing.
Let me talk a little bit more about making a choice about independent living or assisted living and moving. I tell folks to plan ahead in the sense of go and look at these places before you need them, because when you go in crisis mode, you're going to say, I'll just take it, and you don't really pay attention to what you're getting or what you really need. So I always say, like, when people come to me and they don't know where to start, whether it's assisted living or whether it's nursing home, I want them to go and look at maybe 4 or 5 different places and come up with the 1 or 2 favorites, and go under circumstances of being less pressured to make that decision now, and pay attention and I'm a list maker. So when you go and visit, make a note of the things that you really like and the things that you really did not like about that place. And when you go to the next one, you do the same thing and the same thing. And then you start comparing and you come to a choice of, this is my first, this is my second, and share that with your family so that they know what you're thinking. What if something happens to you and you're the main decision maker and you're not able to verbalize that, and somebody else is going to have to make that decision? So they need to know what your preference is. So I don't think you can visit too many nursing homes or too many assisted living facilities. And I'll just mention quickly, there's one exception to the traditional assisted living, and that's St. James Place. St. James Place is a life care community, and you buy into St. James Place. There's a large initial investment, and then you pay so much per month after that. But what you're paying, if you move in at independent living, and let's say you're paying $6,000 a month, but then over the years you get sick enough that you need to be in the nursing home, which might cost $9,000 a month because you came in and you started paying, that's all you're going to pay. You're locked in at whatever you start paying. So that's an exception. That's only at St. James.
I think we can close it out with one question unless anybody else has any questions. So let's say I'm a caregiver and I have stress about finances. Where would you suggest me to start?
Okay. I would suggest beginning with a financial advisor. Let me back that up. I would say start with a family. if there's somebody that you trust to sit down and talk finances, and the reason I specify if you trust, because I have families that I've worked with who say, I'm not putting anything in my children's name because they're gonna spend it before I get to use, okay? It happens, you know, and I've had folks that say, you know, children have run through their money. But if you have somebody in your family who's trustworthy and you know, that you feel their input is valuable, maybe that might be a good first step. Sit down and discuss the finances. And even if they don't have answers, they have an idea of what your grapples. And then perhaps the second step would be a financial.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I learned some helpful things. We got some great feedback within the chat of just people enjoying this topic and being made aware of some things that they weren't aware of previously. So good deal. Well, we're gonna go ahead and end the Zoom, but thank everybody for attending today. This was actually a record-breaking participant number for this series that we have. So I'm so happy that we had Ms. Rose here today for this topic. So thanks everybody for attending on Zoom.